Hello and welcome to a new edition of True Audio Files. We've got kind of a special video for this week where I had a chance to go to Chicago and I got to hang out with some friends during a business trip on my times off. And one of those friends is a person who has probably forgotten more about turntables than I would ever remember. And his name was Bes. He's from Music Direct. And he actually initially set up my turntable and has made some great recommendations throughout the years on upgrades, things like my phono stage and things on that nature, which we get into in the interview. But so in Chicago, I had a great time. I got to visit a lot of great record stores, including Reckless Records here, Dusty Groove. I also checked out Oak Park Records and Old School Records and like Half Price Books and a lot of places like that too. So I'm going to have a great video about my haul that I had, because I got some probably 2 or 3, if not grails, close to grails, but one was definitely a grail, one that I didn't even know was a grail because I didn't even know it existed until I found it. But so I'm very excited to show you guys what I got, but I wanted to start off with this video first. So I also got to go to the Prince immersive experience down in downtown Chicago, which had a lot of his old guitars and a replica of his studio and a replica of one of his clubs, the Glam Slam. A lot of great stuff there. A decent gift shop was there as well, and just overall great time with friends and spending some time and maybe too much money on records too. So, but anyways, so here's part 1 of the interview. I wanted to split it up because it's quite long, and I know that sometimes it's hard to watch an entire long video all at once, so I want to kind of break it up in chunks. One other thing I want to warn about as well is we didn't have a great studio to record this interview in, so we basically used my friend's listening room, and he had his dog with us, a great dog named Harvey. Shout out to Sean and Harvey. But you might potentially hear some dog panting. Trust me, that's not a perverted thing or anything. It's just a dog panting in the background, but you'll probably hear that in there, so I apologize ahead of time, but we've got a lot of great information on these videos. So here is part 1. Sit back and enjoy. All right, so do you want to start off with maybe talking a little bit about yourself and like your experience, or how do you want to do that?
Well, if we're going to play that bio game, here's how it goes. Grew up around hi-fi thanks to my late father. He was more casual about it in his early days when I was a small child, growing up in the suburbs outside of Washington, D.C. But it wasn't until around 1968 when we moved to Illinois when he got hit with the bug. So I can still remember him coming home with a Thorn's TD-124 turntable, a Macintosh C22 preamp, a Mac 240 amplifier, and a pair of Altec Lansing Valencias with Wolverine tweeters and,
Nice.
and controls. And that's really where it all started. I didn't really figure into the audio world until he allowed me to actually start playing records like the Partridge Family, the family heirloom of my time, which was a collection of Disney's greatest songs.
I've had some of those.
Which you get with your tank of gas at Gulf stations.
Yep.
And
he lets you actually play him on that
system. He lets you
huh?
actually play him on his hi-fi. And as I developed my love of music, which was mostly at the time focused on AM radio here in Chicago, so WLS, WCFL, and the black-owned stations like WJPC, WVON, and the like, it was just listen to the radio and let it all happen. By the time I was 18 and graduating from high school, I had to pretty much make a decision as to what's going on. So at the college I was attending, there was the job wall where you found little 3x5 written job offers from various places, retailers and whatnot. And what happens next is there's an opening for a job at a chain of audio shops that flourished in the 1980s, 70s, and 80s called Pacific Stereo. And there was an opening for a salesperson at their Evanston location.
Nice.
I found myself jumping in at the chance, but not before I stole the job offer thing, because I wanted to jump at it. And before I knew it, I would spend the first 5 years, 1981 to 86, in hi-fi retail. So I would work selling mostly major brand equipment. We were in the era when we transitioned from vinyl to CD, so our shop had the first CD, CDP 101 Sony CD player, the Magnavox top-load CD player. I had an unusual thing about selling audio back then, where it was a very gung-ho business and you were focused on selling very profitable products, making sure you hit your commission numbers and you come home with fatter checks.
Yes.
I found myself more quality-driven, so
Me too.
they would get upset when I'd look at them, and my managers, and they're like, "Why are you selling the Advent loudspeaker?" Because I said I think it sounded good for the customer. Is there something wrong with that? You know, that kind of sort of challenge between myself and the managers. But
I used to have a trouble with some of the salespeople I'd work with, like, because their bottom line was, what's going to make me the biggest spiff, the biggest.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it was nothing to do with what was right for the customer.
And there's nothing wrong with that when you look at it then as now. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, but I was still a very quality first kind of guy. So rather than be the numbers guy, I had a better following of customers, referrals, the kind of compliments that made you feel good about what it is that you're doing in this industry. So when the floor gave out and Pacific went under in the summer of 1986, I found myself in what I now refer to the Holden Caulfield years of retail, where I would learn from places as unusual as a camera shop at Illinois Center downtown, or a gift shop that was the direct competitor to the Sharper Edge and all that sort of stuff. And it wasn't until roughly, I'd say 1989, 90, 91 that I found my footing again.
Yeah.
Ended up working for one of the greatest retailers in the Chicago area, in Andy Zimmerman and Saturday Audio Exchange, whose concept of being only open 2.5 days a week, selling outlet level stuff that was properly vetted and at prices that customers could appreciate, with a sales staff of people who were also veterans in the industry like myself, who just did it, had fun with it, and afterwards we'd go to the bar and have a couple of cocktails and head home.
Absolutely.
But Andy, to his credit, I think really transformed the way that I thought about audio and made it more fun, more exciting, more conversational, less geeky, less hot over the top tech than in any other career that I've ever had. So when the opportunity presented itself in 1995 to join Jim and Bridget Davis over at Music Direct, I'm like, I'm trying to go back to school. Saturday Audio was a part-time thing. I'm still living at home. Please don't hire me. Please. And here we are 27 and a half years later, and
that's awesome.
The story continues.
Absolutely. So, the main reason why I wanted to bring Bes in here is because, well, number one, I bought my Rega RP6 off of Music Direct probably 7 or 8 years ago now, and Bes was the guy who set it up for me with the Ortophon 2M Black cartridge, and I'm loving it still. And every time I've had some turntable questions or just vinyl questions in general, or record collection, like phono preamps and things like that, I've gone to him. Bought my Music Fidelity MX vinyl off of your suggestion.
Wow. Thank you.
And made a huge difference. So, I mean, I had a Rotel preamp that had a great built-in phono stage, but it was amazing the difference that made. So it was very impressive, and I'm loving that. So I bought a lot of my turntable stuff off of him, and I figured it would be a great opportunity to maybe ask him some questions that I have. I posted on YouTube for some other questions. I got one that I think I can actually answer, so I'll do that as well. But the first question I had that I've been curious about is it's Ozone is the name of the
Anza.
Anzan. That's right.
Anza is the brand.
So
yeah.
So I apologize. I actually have one. I stopped using it just temporarily. He's got prop man here.
Wow, thank you. Backstage banter.
But so there it is right there. But there's been some debate about whether it leaves residue on your stylus, and I think that's still open for debate. And so we won't go too deep into that aspect of it because I think the results are still kind of out there and we don't know for certain. But what I did want to ask is maybe what some recommendations, maybe even beyond that you think are the best things to use to clean your stylus, and maybe how often you should clean it and things like that.
There's a lot to unpack in trying to answer that question. And Jim, I think one of the things that needs to be understood when we look at a record collection. So, for example, we're in this beautiful space.
We are.
And the owner of this record collection is just deep. I mean, really deep. We also know that the record collection of most music buyers today is a mishmash of what it is that he or she owned over their lifetime, as well as what he or she is buying in the present day.
Yep.
And in those instances, you want to understand the scope of the record collection in general.
Yep.
The turntable that he or she is using, the cartridge, such as the 2M Black that you mentioned at the onset, and how often it is that you are going to be playing those records.
Yep.
If the individual is a casual player, two things always have to be understood. That the record collection is cleaned before every use,
yes,
or preserved, and there's two distinctions in that regard. And once those records are cleaned and cared for in appropriate sleeves like MoFi sleeves and so on and so forth, how often is he or she going to be playing those records on that deck?
Yep.
Okay. If we're going to be, I'll be careful to say this, if we're going to be like really crazed about how much you're trying to care for your records and your needles, that average person will probably be cleaning his or her stylus literally with each side.
Yeah.
But I think that is, in general, overkill.
I think so, too, yeah.
Because, number one, if you've already taken the opportunity to clean your records with appropriate fluids that are designed for archival-level stuff, say, for example, with a machine like the Degritter, or a more traditional record cleaning machine like the VPI 16.5,
which we have both of them here,
or any of the conventional record cleaning machines that are available, and using the right type of fluid for the job, whether it's distilled water, whether you're using surfactants that are that are designed for lifting that kind of material, the job is already done. The needle should, for all intents and purposes, be clean.
Exactly. Well, and that's what I've thrown in my a few of my videos, and I can put them in tiles up in this section so you can look at them. But my big thing is, before any record goes on my turntable, it gets cleaned. Whether it's the VPI or I actually have an ultrasonic now, but either way, it's going to be cleaned, and I'm going to put a new inner sleeve in there.
Yeah.
Before it touches my turntable, new or used. It doesn't matter if it's new or used, because new has stuff on it, especially if it's in paper sleeves or whatnot. So you want to make sure that those are super clean. And then I actually go through the extra step of using like a AudioQuest brush, the carbon fiber brush when the turntable's spinning.
You mean like actually, this one right here?
Like that one. And trust me, we're not getting paid for any of these things. So but I actually use this exactly.
The opinions shared are not necessarily those of the host or the guest.
That's right. We're going with.
You should have put the music track numbers up.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have a link to
There'll
them.
There'll be a big asterisk going up. Ping! Anyway.
But yeah, so I clean the records, but then I also use this right before I play it too.
Yeah.
So I maybe every 5 to 10 records I'll use a brush and just do that.
And that actually is a pretty good protocol for most use. If you are a more than recreational record player, that is to say, your weekend is built around listening to Fi. Mm-hmm. Have fun. That's number one. But number two, that's probably the time when, yes, a little bit more frequent stylus brushing is good. The other thing to note, and not to sound like we're harsh on these guys here, the level of stylus cleaners that are currently on the market, whether it's from MoFi or any other notable brand that's out there, the important thing is, wow, he's really good audience back there, isn't he?
He's
the important thing is that it does the job safely and correctly. So when you're using the fluid for the first time, you're covering the most dominant areas of the diamond tip and as much of the cantilever as humanly possible towards you. This is not brushing your teeth.
That's what I do, always towards.
This is not brushing your teeth with, Crest toothpaste or whatever.
Yes.
And then if it came with a secondary brush, which is usually that very tightly packed fiber brush or carbon fiber brush that's really tight, that's when it goes in and gets really, into the nasty stuff, and it removes as much as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Now, I should point out that there have been a few occasions where a customer will come into the office and say, it's really sounding like, expletive deleted.
Yeah.
And that's when the only time I'd sit there, all right, well, let's take a look. And I go under the scope and I see it's nothing but black crud.
Yeah, well, there's a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I basically say to those individuals, what are you using for record cleaning?
They say what?
There will be those individuals who will claim that they're using some kind of record cleaning system, or they're using water or other stuff. I'm like, define, and
Yeah,
and
you gotta
really
go into detail.
You really have to sort of politely ask them what's right, what's wrong. And then when I take my fluids and do a nice hard brush and then show them under the scope how it looked, before versus after, I'm like, oh my God, I've been doing it all wrong.
Yep.
And my response is, it's not a matter of doing it wrong. It's now learning
How
what
to
you
do it,
can
yeah.
do to ensure that your listening experiences are more engaging.
Yeah.
And you're doing it with appropriate materials.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
What would you say are your favorite methods of cleaning the Stylus? Like, what have you seen out there that you really like? And that's not necessarily have to be brand, but maybe type of cleaning.
Again, I don't
device?
think there's any right or wrong on it, but I'm a believer in the wet system.
Okay.
I think that when you use a product like MoFi LP number 9, if you continue to use Last or any other, popularly accepted fluids that don't have any kind of risk in like causing
Residue or anything?
residue, or worse still, that it attacks the adhesives that hold the diamond tip
Yeah,
in place
that's
in the cantilever, then you're in a good place. And the thing that is that you do it not so much conservatively, but on an as needed or situational basis.
Yeah.
Once you're done with that, you're home free.
Yeah, I mean, because I've actually been primarily using a dry brush, and I think it's been pretty effective. I don't have a microscope to look, but my records still sound great, and I go through all those extra steps prior to it too, with the the ultrasonic and or the VPI machine and the carbon fiber brush. So
Right.
hopefully less and less of that stuff is getting onto the Stylus too. So but I've been looking at things like the ultrasonic Stylus cleaners, and been kind of curious about those, and what your thoughts are on those.
Well, ultrasonic cleaners have been around for a long time.
And that's for the Stylus now, yeah.
Yeah, you have to look back at the days when companies like Audio-Technica were producing these really cool battery-operated devices. But now with the newer models that are on the market, I think they're better controlled. They're more reliable, in my opinion. And they can only do a better job in the process of cleaning it. Another thing to note with most ultrasonic cleaners is that they may have the effect of trying to remove flux that's built in through the cantilever into the yoke area where there might be sediment along the coils and other stuff to help it. The only downside to that, and this is, I'm not surprised, is that there may be a risk where the ultrasonic is so dynamic
Yeah,
that it could screw up,
Adhesives or
an
whatever.
armature. And that's a buyer beware scenario. You can't hope for that or not want that, but if it happens, it happens.
Yeah. And my guess is this is kind of more of a side note thing. I would imagine you probably want to turn down your stereo when you're trying to clean the needle too.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine to be very loud with
the opposite of mute. No. But to your point, yes, I think as anybody who's doing Stylus cleaning, whether it's through fluid-based dry methods, the hi-fi goes on mute, no matter what.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that is the end of part 1. If you liked what you saw here, hit that subscribe button or hit the like button. If you want to see more of my videos, hit that subscribe button, and then hit that alert bell when you want to know when my new videos come out. Also, if you want to see more or interact more with me, I also have some social media accounts. I've got my own True Audio Files page on Facebook. I also have accounts in Instagram and Twitter as well. So check me out on those. The information is in the description. So thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.